G'day, my name is Ibaglo, and welcome back to Let's Play Star Trek Online. This week we're actually going to start playing the actual game. Well, I should say I'm going to make my new character, and we'll go through from start. Now, didn't really have a whole lot of interest in helping me decide how I'm going to play, so I decided to follow one of my friend's suggestions, and I'm going to make a engineering officer. In fact, he wanted to have a Ferengi engineering officer. So I am actually going, however, to... Okay, so this is where, as I mentioned in the first video, most of the default races have a number of built-in traits, and then it lets you choose from a pool of other ones. For the Ferengi, the default traits, the first is lobes, which gives bonus to perception, bonus to exploit damage, which I'll explain a little bit later, and a discount on purchasing prices. And then the next one is natural immunities, which just gives them bonus immunity to bonus resistance to radiation and toxic damage. Then, because all the races have four total traits that they can pick, then there's two bonus ones that you can choose. So the first one I'm going to pick is Warp Theorist, which is very good for pretty much everyone, because what it gives bonuses to the warp core potential stat and the electroplasma system stat. And what these two stats are is the first one, warp core potential, basically affects how much energy your ship has, which is something I'll go over in just a little bit, because it's also going to be covered in the tutorial. And electroplasma system stat affects how fast energy transfers from one system to another. So because of the way a lot of the game systems work, Warp Theorist is actually very important. Well, I shouldn't say important, but it is very useful if you want to focus on space combat, which is really the best part of the game. Next, so I mean, a lot of these just give very basic bonuses, you know, plus accuracy, bonus to stealth, bonus to all damage. That one's just a ground trait, and they're also split between whether they affect the ground or whether they affect space combat. I think I'm going to take... So, the intent of this this build is that I'm going to be using the engineer's innate recovery abilities and defenses in order to make... as I fly escorts, in order to make them more resilient than they normally would be. So to go along with this, I'm going to take the Techie Space trait, which gives a bonus to starship hull repair. Which, as is probably obvious, gives a bonus to your recovery when you to recovery on your hit points. So, what is that? Alright, that tattoo's supposed to go. Oh, yeah, that'd be why. Okay. Okay, yeah, that's why. All right. For some reason, it defaulted the tattoo colors to your normal skin color. Yeah, it's just kind of weird, so whatever. Oh, hey. Yeah, there we go. There we go. All right. So, I mean, I mentioned this in the first video, but yeah, there's a lot of options, even when you're picking a pre-built race. You know, like how big do you want your nose to be? How big do you want your nostrils to be? Like, this is, like, some of this stuff is just ridiculous in how excessive it is. And, like, you know, for some people, like, it's very important that you fully customize how exactly you want your character to look. At the same time, like, man, some of these are just... This is a lot more depth than I really want to go into. So, really, the important one here is stance, which allows you to sort of change how your character looks as he's just sort of walking around. Yeah, that would be appropriate. And then, you know, again, you can fool around with settings like, hey, how big are you? How long are your arms? You know, details that are way more in depth than I want to go into. But now here is uniforms. So I sort of briefly showed these ones off before. So these first 10 are the unique ones that sort of came by default. Well, that and the Next Generation Films ones. But these ones were all designed specifically for Star Trek Online. And then you have all these awesome ones that you can get from the C-Store, plus some ones that I don't have that I haven't actually purchased yet. In fact, yeah, I'm going to go with this. So, badge, you know, various badges for a lot of different things that are in the game. Huh. Hey. I've always liked that one. Yeah, rank is a very minor thing, and in fact, one of the reasons. So when you rank up, oh, there it is. When you get a new rank, you actually get a free costume change, which is primarily designed to let you actually change your rank on your costume to be your new rank. Gloves? Nah. Now, unfortunately, though, your options for leg wear are a lot more limited than they are. Oh, I don't have that one. Oh, wait, yes, I do. That's just because. Yeah. So because some of my costumes came from a bundle, it sort of gets a little confused. It's just like, hey, I don't know what you did. Could you just let me know, please? Yeah, you can. Most costume pieces have multiple different locations that you can actually paint. I have no idea what that one is actually covering. Is it something? No. Alright, it's probably something covered up by my shirt. And lastly, boots. I think you'd want something, yeah, pretty sleek like that. Alright, next, you then put in what you want your character's name to be. Well, My friend recommended Clark. Who knows? And as well, even though you don't quite have your first ship yet, you get the opportunity to put in the name of what it'll be once you finally get it. Anyways, I shouldn't say finally because it doesn't take very long. So we're going to... So because this is in fact an opportunity, we're going to take a page from the rules of acquisition. One thing that's pretty nice about the way names work in Star Trek Online, in fact, the names work in most cryptic properties, is that because it's based on... the way cryptic handles usernames is that your name inside the game is basically your character name at your account name, which means that as long you can have your characters in ships named whatever you want, as long as it's not interfering with one of your own characters. But ships are tied to the account, so you just can't have two ships with the same name belonging to the same character, but you can have two ships across your entire account with the same name. But I couldn't have two Clarks on my account. But any other player in the rest of the game world can name their characters the same thing as me because of the way they tie it to your account name. And the rest of this is just optional stuff that I'll probably fill in later, possibly. But for now, let's just dive right in. So recently they overhauled the tutorial, and this is actually the first time I've played the new tutorial since it's been redone.
After I left Starfleet, I made it my life's work to reunite the Romulans with their Vulcan brothers. For many years, I lived among them and waged the campaign of peace. Lived long. And 21 years ago, the star of the Holder system went supernova and sent a wave of devastation across the globe. I promised to save the Romulan homeworld. I failed. The planets Romulus and Remus were destroyed. Countless billions were killed. My home, my friends, my life, all are memories. Time does not stop for one man, and neither does history. The chaos in Romulan space gave the Klingon Empire an opportunity to expand its territory. Jimpak, the Chancellor of the High Council, traded diplomacy for the tip of a blade. Only in battle, Jimpak says, is a Klingon truly Klingon. The Federation did its utmost to preserve its alliance with the Klingons, but war was inevitable. Romulans want revenge for their lost world. The Dominion is rebuilding its forces. Now the Borg have reappeared and attacked the Vega colony. The Alpha Quadrant balances on the edge of ruin. The fate of the galaxy rests in your hands.
I don't know why you needed to advertise that in the middle of your game, but okay. So that actual the dialogue that Leonard Nimoy was reading there was actually used to be used somewhere else, and was recently repurposed for the new tutorial. Oh, and this is just... This message is just actually unrelated to the tutorial. Just one of the bonuses I got for having been part of the game for over 1,000 days. Hey! Alright. First of all, before I do that... Alright. Okay. So, one of the interesting things in Star Trek Online is... and I'll just do this first, very quickly first of all. When you're in an instanced zone, any player can actually pause the game for everyone that's inside of it. This doesn't. You can't use this on social zones. You can only do it in mission zones, and it actually will. It'll cap at 1 minute per player, and it will actually count up. It has to recharge between uses, and it's quite a lengthy time too. It's like 5 seconds. You have to play, or the engine has to be running for every 1 second that you want to pause. Anyway, so we're just in a very basic tutorial now. So we'll just move over, and there we go. Yeah, this is definitely a much different tutorial than what I had played before. In fact, it looks like they've reworked things so that the opening is unique based on what class you are. Before it was basically that you were basically in the lounge, sort of enjoying it up, and then suddenly, whoops, you got attacked. Now you got to get to the bridge. Now it actually seems to be more like you're actually doing something, and then you have some things happen. This part's basically the same, it looks like. So now we're being tutorialized to how to use things.
This is the emergency medical hologram aboard the USS Kittimer. I am requesting assistance from any Federation vessel in range. The Kittimer is being overwhelmed by Borg boarding parties. These Borg are different than the ones in my history records. They seem disconnected somehow. They're strange, but still quite dangerous.
So that's actually a piece of information that is relevant, but not at this very moment. Once you get later in the game, you actually do start encountering Borg as an enemy, and you will find out that the Borg that you fight here are actually significantly different from those ones.
I've lost contact with the bridge, and main engineering is under assault. I am unable to contact Commander Davis for new instructions. I don't know how much longer we can hold the ship. You must send help immediately.
Right, so hey, now we got something to do. Because I don't know, your best option for something to do in a situation like this is to send the lowly ensign over. Yeah, and we're only sending one guy too. Because, hey, why not? I do remember Cryptic specifically saying, though, as they were pushing the new tutorial, that they specifically designed that starting transporter sequence just so that you could see that, yes, there is in fact actually the full sequence, but later on in the game they don't tend to show that very much, just because there's not really a whole lot of a point to it. Like, why you don't need to see that every time. It's just more work than they work, but it's just.
I am an emergency medical hologram, not a miracle worker.
And, you know, they clearly programmed some of the typical Trek sensibilities into the EMH. Unfortunately, they couldn't get the actual doctor, but I think this is actually meant to be based on one of the later models.
I need your help, Ensign. Much of the Kittimer's crew was injured in the initial Borg assault. None of the crewmen assisting me have medical training. Maybe you will be more useful. I assume you passed basic medical training at the Academy?
Well, I don't know. I mean, if the crewmen haven't.
Use your tricorder to scan one of the patients. Your data will be uploaded to me automatically. There are advantages to being a hologram. When you're done, report back to me.
Oh, well, okay, if it's as simple as that.
Not bad, Ensign. You show some talent for medicine. If you work hard and apply yourself, someday you might be almost as skilled as I am.
Yeah, that was sure taxing.
Lieutenant Fellis is working on restoring the computers and auxiliary control. He needs assistance. Report to him for new instructions. I will stay connected to you via comm badge until the situation is under control.
Okay.
I have 75 million gigaquads of computer memory and an extensive library of files on military tactics and command strategies. I believe I can spare a few bits of processing power for you. There is an 88.47% chance that you will need my help.
Gee, thanks. You didn't need to be so straightforward about it. Jerk. I really like how they use how they tie in a bit of storytelling with making the Borg act in such a way that it's easy for tutorializing. Oh, come on. There we go. It's like, hey, they're just standing there letting us just put them in the teleporter buffer. Because, you know, we need a way to tutorialize this stuff. You know, it's convenient. Whoosh. That's still satisfying, though. Yeah, so this part of the tutorial is actually the same as, from what I remember. It seems like that first part was modified to be based on more on what your class is. Oh, so here now we get the tutorial on attacking things. So there's actually two ways to engage enemies now. There's basically your typical MMO style where you target an object, and then you use whatever your attack buttons are in order to activate it. But then there's also a new mode. Let's see if I remember the button for it, called shooter mode, which is way less of a shooter than the name would normally than you would think from the name. But the way it works instead is that it allows you to aim around with the mouse and then use your mouse buttons to use certain powers on your bar right down here. You saw that these three had a highlight on them. What that means is that basically your left, middle, and right button would then use those powers, and you can press certain buttons to move those around. But the idea is that you, instead of needing to have something targeted before you attack, like, see, if I were to just press my button now, oh, it would just automatically target the closest thing. But normally, like, if there was nothing around, I would just sort of stand here doing nothing. Oh man, I love the physics on random objects. It's just so nonsense. But shooter mode allows you to then just free aim around. It's useful in some situations, and there's something that they have that there's minor bonuses for doing it as well. But in the end, it really doesn't matter. You don't need to use one or the other. It's definitely personal preference. But the idea was that it was meant to make the shooting a little bit more dynamic. Oh, and I need to turn on auto fire. So there isn't an auto fire by default. You need to actually turn it on. Ground, auto attack, change cancels. Right, there we go. So the way this works now is that, oh, come on. There we go. Okay. Now I've activated the auto fire on the weapon, so all I need to do is target, press the button. Instead of needing to just jam on the button as it cools down, which on a lot of weapons, back when the game first came out, there wasn't an auto fire for ground weapons. There was for space weapons, which was pretty glitchy, but they didn't have one for ground weapons at the time. And the way it worked was pretty... So the way weapons worked back then was really bad, because you had weapons of various cooldowns based on what they were, because you had weapons that would fire like a single shot, or you'd have weapons that fired a burst. And in almost 100% of the situations, you always wanted to have the weapons that fired a burst instead of the weapons that fired one at a time, because then you wouldn't have to press the button so fast. And it's just, it made whole categories of weapons like entirely unwanted, and it was just unfun. So it was great when they finally added auto fire to ground weapons, because it made all these single shot semi-auto weapons actually useful again, or at least made it useful to me. Oh, well, that vanished very quickly, probably because I was still shooting. There's a bit of a... I wouldn't necessarily call it a bug, but there's a bit of an error with the pop-up messages in combat. It's technically working as intended, but it can be annoying because... So when you're in combat, it minimizes all those screens because you're fighting. You know, you sort of want to see the rest of your screen, whereas, you know, this time it cut a little early, and it would normally put a little button here so that you can pop it back up, but sort of because this was more of just information instead of it being like the next thing you need to do, it is not letting you bring that back up. Anyway, you just want us to come over here and talk to him. Alright, so now I need to get back to my ship. Not through the horde of Borg, though. I want to go this way. Alright, so here is where you're going to learn about bridge officers. And I didn't really talk about bridge officers before, but they are one of the pretty cool mechanics in Star Trek Online. So the idea is that you yourself are the captain. So of course, as the captain, you have some underlings attached to you, and these are your bridge officers for the most part. Bridge officers are AI-controlled characters that you can bring with you on away missions, or you can slot into sections of your ship. And there you are. And they have various powers, much like you, but there's a lot that are only available on bridge officers, or that you can only train to bridge officers. Because at the same time, there's ones that you can get from other bridge officers or from a bridge officer trainer, but at the same time there's also ones that you can learn from applying skill points and then assign to a bridge officer yourself. So here, this is also tutorializing the mission successful. Back in the original tutorial, at this phase, you were actually given the opportunity of choosing one of each of the 3 types of bridge officers: the tactical, the science, and the engineering. And it was kind of a bad place to put that decision, because you know, here's a new player, you've just started, you don't know what you're going to do, and now you're being thrust into this situation where you need to make a decision about what you're going to take for this first candidate. And at the time, that was also the first candidate you got for quite a while. So if you knew anything about what was to come, there wasn't really much of a decision, because you wanted to take the one that actually gave you healing. In the new tutorial, however, they actually give you one of each as you proceed, but they still only give it to you one at a time. So the first one they'll give you is a tactical officer candidate, before you used to be able to do the customizations of your bridge officer after, like, right away, but because we're tutorializing, they won't let us do that right now. Okay, so now I need to head back to my ship, because we're having some trouble with the Borg as well. Oh, and somehow, as I was off the ship, the Borg killed all the officers. Somehow. Yeah. So, right now, what's happening is that you know, the Borg have intact, and my shields, well, my weapons are disabled, and I'm in pretty rough shape. So now we're tutorializing moving a ship. So here, if you don't know how to actually control a ship, you can get some instructions. So I'll just quickly go over it. So the way ship movement works is primarily a left and right mouse button system. If you hold the left mouse button, you can move your camera. You can also move the camera with the right mouse button as well, but primarily you do it with the left. You can move and tilt your ship using the WASD keys. Increase, decrease your throttle with Q and E, or with the slider bar. But the best way is to move your ship is to actually use both the left and the right mouse button, because what that does is it rotates the camera in any direction, but then your ship will automatically attempt to turn and face wherever your camera is set. So now tutorializing, accessing, basically interacting with ships in space to beam stuff off them and then move around the area. So, I mean, this is, quick and dirty, but boy, this map looks a lot better than it did originally. It's still basically the same map, or at least the mission objectives is still basically the same, but yes, it's just they did something to it. The map looks nicer, and it seems like it's a little bit more streamlined. So that's really nice. I really like that. I'm hit up again. So they don't have collision damage in Star Trek Online, thankfully. So if you run up into something or you run too close to something, your ship will just sort of ram into it. like, as goofy as that is, I think that's actually the best way that they could have done to handle it. So I have no problems with that. The main reason why I absolutely love Star Trek Online space combat, though, is that it is basically the old Starfleet Command games in a more real-time capability. And I loved the old Starfleet Command games. Like, they are hard, they're very detailed, but they have so much. There's just so much that you can do with them, and it's just a lot of fun. And the idea that you have something similar to that in a more real-time game, that's just amazing. And it doesn't hurt as well that the space combat just looks so good. I mean, you're not going to have much. Not gonna be much in this mission that will show that off, but boy, the space combat just looks so good, and I'm hoping that you folks will get to see that as this series goes on. So anyway, now that I've proven that I can move my ship and interact with things in space, I'm going to be able to get my my weapons and shields going, and then we can do some combat tutorializing. Right, another thing as well is that like, because I'm still damaged, I don't have access to like all the stuff, but full impulse is the simplest of the there he is. Full impulse is the simplest of the energy control abilities, and what it does is it basically puts all energy to your impulse engines, which allows you to go very fast. And the speed is dependent on the engine that's on your ship, and engines is actually one of the things that will that you can replace as loot in this game, and I'll go over the loot items in just a little bit. Anyway, now that my stuff's all repaired, let's do some combat trials. That still looks great. Alright, so now we're being tutorialized on the way weapons work. All weapons have... So, one thing that's a little silly in Star Trek Online is that ranges are actually set in kilometers. Which really should have been something slightly longer than that. Especially since the weapon firing range is 10 kilometers. I kind of have the feeling that that is pretty minuscule, but yeah, it's super goofy, but it works well enough. Like, it doesn't really affect the actual gameplay. It's just goofy from a logical sense. And you know, I mentioned as well before. So your weapons have arcs of fire. You can see how my forward phasers here can hit 250 degrees. My forward photon torpedo can only shoot 90. And because I've turned on auto fire, actually let me double check to make sure that it is in fact on. Yep. Okay. I can set my... What I like to do is I like to set my phasers, or basically all my auto-firing weapons, to just keep firing at once. So that way I can make use of them. That way I don't need to worry about them no matter what my facing is. And then with that done, I can just press button once and start firing. It's also great as well because you can see how the weapons also have various fire rates and cooldowns. So you really would not want to be, especially once you get 8 weapons on a ship, you don't want to be trying to manually fire all of them. Like, if this game did not have auto fire for weapons, H plane would not work. So the way weapons work in Star Trek Online is that your beam weapons work best against shields, so they still do respectable damage against an enemy's hull. But photon weapons, or basically any torpedo or mine, which is considered a kinetic weapon, works best against the hull, and they get dramatically reduced effect against an enemy's shields. So now that we've tested our weapons on these damaged and inoperable Borg probes, we're now going to go and shoot some real Borg. Well, real-ish. Alright, so now that my stuff is fully active, here is the energy bars. The way energy works is that basically by default your ship has basically 200 energy to play around with. And you can set presets of how you want that energy allocated, or you can just use the default ones. And the default ones are actually pretty good. So I like this attack one I just activated. Puts the energy focus on weapons with a slight focus on shields, and then very little focus on your maneuverability or your auxiliary. And what these energy pools are is basically as it says right on the tin. Weapon energy directly affects how much damage your weapons do. So you can see here, well, if you can see on your screen, right now it says that these phasers will do 160 DPS. If I go into balance energy and hover back onto this, you can see how as the energy level drops, the damage of my phasers go down. So now it's down to 80 DPS. So going from 50 energy to 100 energy was basically a doubling of the damage of these phaser weapons. But as you fire more weapons, more energy weapons, your weapons energy starts to go down, causing all your weapons to start dealing less damage. Shields affects basically how fast your shields will recover. I better get out of here. How fast your shields will recover. If your shield energy is under 25, then you just plain will not recover any shields. But if your shield goes up to basically the higher your rating is above 25, the faster your shield will recover. Going into engines is how fast your ship will go. You need to have a certain amount of your ship will gain some bonus defense the faster your ship goes to a certain degree. After a certain point, you don't gain any more bonus defenses, but it's still very important to have your ship be moving at all times, or else you will be hit by a lot more weapons. And auxiliary is mostly used for more special powers. Alright, let's just get out of this location here. It's primarily used by the science powers to determine their damage strength, much like weapons. Oh, come on. Alright, whatever. But other powers will use them to determine their effectiveness. Like there are various powers that transfer auxiliary energy to other subsystems, so their effectiveness will be directly benefited by how much auxiliary power you have. But for the most part, unless you're a science captain in a science ship, your auxiliary is not that useful. yeah. Let's just get out of combat here so I can get to the next phase of the tutorial. I love the combat in Star Trek Online. Oh, the space combat at least. It just feels so good. Maybe not quite as much with just a beginner ship with only 3 weapon slots, but once I get into larger ones, it just looks and feels so dramatic. Oh, for goodness sake. It's a good thing these probes go down so easily. I just need to get out of combat. I remember when I was going through the game for the first time myself, it was actually hard to do these phases because there was just so many people trying to get through the tutorial. Alright, there. That should do it now. I just need to wait until I get out of red alert, because just like the series, you can't beam down if you're in red alert. There we go. Okay. So you see this time now that that button came back up because it interrupted the message that was here before. So now I'm going down to the planet on for ground combat, and it will ask you to choose what your away team will be. So in this case, well, I've only got one guy, so I might as well take him or her, really. Right. Right, so now we're going to be tutorialized about kits, which is the one piece of gear that's unique to captains as opposed to bridge officers. Your bridge officers have basically predefined power layouts, but you can change these power layouts around as you want, but it requires an investment of resources in order to do so. However, on the other hand, your captain has a piece of gear called a kit you can equip, and these kits basically just straight up give you a series of powers based on what that kit gives. So here, then we can choose our equipment. So before it gave you a bit of a choice, but again, you got a new player. He doesn't know what any of this stuff is. There's no reason to confuse him by giving him a choice of what abilities to have equipped. So here is your equipment slot. The first piece of kit gear I have basically gives me a power called Chronoton Mine Barrier. And what this actually does is it allows me to place mines on the ground that if an enemy walks into, the mines blow up. I mean, it's mines. It's what you expect. And kits are actually visible pieces of gear on your character, as is some of these other pieces of gear. Your personal shields are not. Body armor is, but you can choose to make the body armor not visible. Weapons are, but again, you can choose to make them not visible. And captains also have 2 weapons that they are able to equip at a time, whereas your bridge officers only have 1. This allows you to have weapons for various different things and switch between them as necessary. So, for example, if you had In fact, I'll take this opportunity to very quickly go over this, which will be tutorialized in just a moment, but I'll do it very quickly as part of this explanation. So there's a mechanic in Star Trek Online called expose and exploit, and what these are is that certain weapons and abilities have the ability to expose an enemy, and the enemy basically gets a big target circle on them, which shows that they have been exposed. And if you use an exploit ability on an enemy that has been exposed, then that ability or weapon deals a significant amount of damage. It's basically a way to get automatic criticals on an enemy, and probably one of the best things about exploiting an enemy is that if you kill an enemy with an exploit power, the enemy will usually vaporize. Sometimes this can be really goofy because some melee attacks are exploits, so you can sometimes vaporize an enemy by punching them. Whatever. Maybe they fixed that. I don't know. It's been a while since I've exploited someone with a melee attack. So basically, the default gear that they just gave you has your standard beam pistol as an expose attack, and then a standard beam rifle as an exploit attack. So you as the captain can switch between the two weapons to synchronize your own exploit and expose capability. But it's also a good idea to give your bridge officers abilities that can expose or exploit, so that they can help you in affecting enemies. Since I've got this open up, we'll take a look here very quickly at ship equipment, which is very straightforward. Ships have various slots that you can put forward-facing weapons and rear-facing weapons in. You can also change their shields, impulse engines, and deflectors. Devices are basically triggerable items on a ship. Some examples are there are certain batteries that you can equip which will restore various abilities. Like there's a shield battery which will instantly give you a shield heal, and then recover. Then will give you a boost to your shield energy rating. Other examples that can go into these slots are there are deployable turrets that you can build later on that will basically put a floating turret in space that will shoot at enemies. And then consoles give passive bonuses to various things, and you see I only got one slot for each of them for each type currently. Engineering consoles are generally bonuses to things like recovery, health recovery, or they can also be bonuses to energy transfer, or even in case of things that are unusually named, but various types of armor are also considered an engineering console. So you can then put something in here which increases your resistance to various forms of damage. Science consoles tend to be the exotic damage types again, increasing your sensor ability so you can find hidden enemies, increasing your stealth ability so you can stay hidden better, increasing your damage with your more unique powers, and also affecting shield strength. And tactical consoles are basically just straight up your weapons deal more damage. And as I showed previously, your bridge officers. We'll look into this one a little bit more later, but for now, let's get moving. In fact, while I'm here, I'm going to change my bars. Okay, so I just accidentally used that power as I was trying to move it. But what would happen is if an enemy were to come here and walk on one of these mines, the mines would just explode. So now, my objective is to go around and defeat these drones that are holding these colonists hostage. In fact, so yeah, I can switch on the fly between weapons, which is pretty handy. Like not as handy now, but later on, if I had two weapons of various effects, like say for example, later on I can get weapons which will give bonus damage against Borg. So if I'm in a map where I'm facing both Borg and something else, I can very quickly bounce between the two weapons in order to get my get the best benefit I can. Oh, looks like some. Oh, so that circle right there is the expose icon. So if I had used my secondary power, I would have vaporized that drone. Between the original launch of the game and now, they also did an overhaul over the various weapon types, which is really good because some of the original weapon types were really kind of lame and not very well thought out. So they then, over one of the previous major patches, went and redesigned the idea of what some of the weapons are, and they merged a few of them together, but they also went and added a whole bunch of just straight up new weapons. Some of them are pretty neat. Like there's some beam miniguns that you can get that I'll probably get a few of and show off later. I don't like using them on my main, but for the most part I kind of have a lot of special event weapons on my main character, so it's hard for me to want to use something else. Alright, so Directive wanted me to get over here. Oh, yeah, so this is... It's like... I don't know if it was just because the other guy was here or was slightly bugged again, but, so there was supposed to be a force field up around all this that you were supposed to deactivate before you shut down that node. I remember it being reversed in the original tutorial, so they might not have fixed that. That map is still exactly the same as it was 3 years ago. Alright, so now that we've done all our basic tutorializing, we're going to do one final major battle. And then the tutorial will then we'll get into the game proper. Alright, so we'll pop up our map. You can see, so these circled areas are basically points for the mission objectives. So if we head up, and one thing that's also nice that they added quite a few patches ago, it wasn't in the original game, but you can see the little flashes of light out in far space. What those are is basically they're basically the nav points, and they're flashing to give you a good idea of, because since space is three-dimensional, you don't actually know exactly where the objective is. So it's good to have a very visible frame of reference like that, so you can look for that as you are flying around in this great big empty space. Alright, so heading towards the beacon, or okay, there we go. Now I can actually engage the enemy. So the ship I'm in right now is technically classified as a cruiser. But the light cruiser is really more designed as kind of a jack of all trades. It can do a lot of everything to give you an idea of what the various ship types can do. Because once you get out into the next rank tier, then you can actually choose one of the three main ship types to focus on. Oh, and conveniently it gave me some loot. Nice. Kind of wanted me to destroy a sphere, but I ended up not. Well, okay, sure.
Congratulations, Lieutenant.
Oh, there's the sphere. Oh, and I leveled up, and because I completed the tutorial, it automatically ranked me from. So, back in the original game, the way it ended, the way it actually worked was you had to complete the tutorial and then talk to the admiral back at Earth Space Dock to actually be promoted to the lieutenant rank, and you technically be the captain of your first ship. But they were Cryptic had been sort of having problems with people not getting any of that, so it looks like they've decided to fix that by just straight up leveling you to lieutenant right away as soon as you complete the as soon as you get your first level. It makes less sense, but I can definitely see why they would want to do this. Anyway, so now we've warped, entering Sol System, and I'll just finish off the tutorial by talking to Admiral Quinn, and then that'll be it for this first video, and then the next time we'll get right into some real missions. So you probably saw this before. Sol System
Excellent work.
is...
Obviously, the exceptional advice and guidance I gave you during this ordeal was key to your success. When you reflect on this incident, I'm sure you'll look upon me as a mentor, or possibly even a father figure.
Yeah, you just keep thinking that, EMH. You can just
I
continue.
will return to my duties now. Remember all that you've learned, and you will be ready for great things. Good luck, Ensign.
Yeah. Alright, so because Earth Space Dock is one of the social zones, in fact, it is the primary social zone for the... Oh man, that is a great looking ship. I actually have one of those in my inventory on my main character. I just don't know who I'm going to unpack it on. Oof. Oof. Tempted. Tempting. Anyway, so because Earth Space Dock is a social zone, the primary one for Starfleet, that means that whenever you're out just floating around in Sol space, there's generally a lot of other players here just chilling in their ships. So it's always pretty cool to look around and see the various ships that are in the game, just like all of them just hanging out, because it's pretty awesome. So anyway, a few major patches ago, they also overhauled Earth Space Dock to make it look more like its classic style. I think it looks pretty sharp. Oh, nice. And this time, as part of the new tutorial, they also have basically they're highlighting the signs on the wall that says, hey, go this way to the Admiral's office, and there's also a holographic pathway for you to follow. Back in the original tutorial, this wasn't here, so you would always have people going, hey, how the hell do I get to the Admiral's office? And even more hilarious, the Admiral would give you a quest right away to talk to another character who is in the same office, and everyone would always miss him. Oh, that's nice too. There used to be a turbo lift to get up to here, but now it's just doors. That's just much sleeker. Yeah, so thanks for doing awesome during the tutorial. We're gonna give you command of that ship, and now it's oh yeah, that's a nice thing as well. Free starship modifications. And I want... Right, so yeah, here's one of the things I was sort of talking about. This is one of this like this is they call it a console, but what it basically is it's armor for your ship, and this one gives basically plus resistance to all damage. There's other ones that you can get which will give different levels of resistance, but it will only give these resistance to specific energy types, or well, to specific sources of damage. And these can be very useful depending on what you are going to be doing. Because if you know that you're going to be fighting an enemy that uses certain types of energy, then it's very useful for you to put on an armor that gives resistance towards that type. Starship flow capacitors is a skill which affects the ability of your ship to drain or resist energy drains. So if I had a power that drained energy from another enemy, from an enemy target, then flow capacitors would give me a benefit to that. I don't have any of that, so we'll just take the straight up plus phaser damage console instead. And then all these tutorials. So I'll just pick up these missions now, and we will look at these at another time. As well as walking through Earth Space Dock. So this has been a fairly long mission, probably mostly because I've been going slowly through it. But many missions in Star Trek Online are actually about this length, which on one hand is pretty nice because it gives the mission sort of that Star Trek feel, like it gives the feel of the length of a TV show, but at the same time it makes it hard to do a lot of things at the same time. But once you actually get to max level, then that's less of an issue because the sort of end game repeatable content is actually much faster to complete. But anyway, that's it for this episode of Let's Play Star Trek Online. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time.